Hello guys, hope you enjoy this series that I make and enjoy the stories as well. Don't forget to follow and like to support me. Story witnessed a mimic, genuinely true. I was once making food in the kitchen. I was 14 at the time, and I only thought I was home alone. My parents went grocery shopping and my brother went to the gym. That's a bit far away from home. However, when I was making the food, my brother walked in on me. I could have sworn he left, and I was the only one who could unlock the door from the inside, so he couldn't have come back already. I just assumed he changed his mind maybe, and he didn't. Actually leave? This man stood there for a full 2 minutes with nothing but a little grin on his face. I'm not joking with you. I finally asked if he wanted any food, and he didn't reply. I didn't think anything of it at all and took it as a yes and made him some food. Anyway, time went by, and I was done making the food, and I went to his room to hand him the food, but this man was nowhere to be found. No one was in the house anymore. My heart dropped. I'm not joking. I hear a doorbell ring instantly and ran to it to open the door because I didn't want to be alone whatsoever. My brother walked in all sweaty from the gym. I asked him what time he left. He said 6 p.m. He came back at 8. The creature came in on me at 7. My brother swore with all his life that he was in the gym, and he acted so confused to the point where we both were scared of what's in the house. Parents came back, we told them about it, and they literally told me that I was hallucinating. It pisses me off till this day that no one believes me, but I swear it's real. I'm not crazy. Story, me and my friends went camping, and it was the worst mistake of my life. How does one comprehend the impossible, the truly impossible? But I suppose this would be the improbable as this happened to me. This all happened a few weeks ago. I was living a perfectly boring life, but after that day I can't even leave the house. I see it racing around my mind, but the image so clear like it's standing there in front of me. I feel myself trapped in the moment, tortured by the memories that haunt me. I'm writing this as a warning, and in case nobody ever hears from me again, to act as a recant of what happened. Don't go into the woods. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon at the supermarket where I work. Stood behind the register, scanning people's stuff glazed, look in my eye, just waiting for something to happen. Until my best friend, out of respect for their families for the purpose of this story, I will be calling all my friends by their first initial. T calls me out of the blue and asks if I can take the next few days off from work to come camping with him and some friends. I have some vacation days saved up, so I say I'll check with my manager. It wasn't unusual for T to call me up randomly. He's the free-spirited, rock climbing, hiking, surfboarding, frickin' paragliding type that always has something they want to get you into. But as far as most of the things he's tried to get me into, camping's pretty tame. Of course, there was going to be a something else to it. T wasn't the type to do something so relaxing. But at the time, I didn't care. I just wanted a few days to hang out with my friends, drink some beers, have some BBQs, and just chill. If only I knew what I was in for. The place we arrived at was Kalashopko Lake, apparently. T discovered it on his most recent hike into the mountains. It was a beautiful place. The water was crystal clear. You could see all the way to the bottom. The spruce trees that surrounded us were so thick that we were completely secluded. You could barely see 10 feet into the forest. A perfect place to relax for a few days. This was not a well-established trail. We were pretty off the beaten path, but still only around 3 miles from the road we came here on and left the cars. I don't know how more people don't know about the place. We are completely alone. The other 3 friends that came with me and T are E, J, and T's girlfriend L. L have known E and J since high school, but L have known T since I was a baby. We grew up across the road from each other and have been best friends since birth, but L I had only met twice, once at a party. T and L were throwing as a meet my new girl thing, and the other was today. That being said, we all got on well. The first day was mainly just spent setting up camp, getting a fire pit established, and getting the food hung up in a tree away from camp. I was told by T and E that there were bears out here. I didn't know if they were messing with me, but I wasn't taking any chances. I'm just glad I brought my rifle with me. I was hoping to catch a deer while we were out here. While we were setting up E and J's tent, they weren't a couple, but we only had 3 tents and nobody wanted to bunk with me because I have insomnia and keep them awake. Something felt weird, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. It wasn't anything inherently wrong. It was just odd, and I wasn't the only one that had noticed it. E had too. He didn't say anything, but I could see on his face he had noticed it too. After we got the tents up, we all sat around the fire drinking a couple of beers, and we had some sandwiches prepped by Elle before we left. So we didn't have to make food on the first night. She was nice like that. As I had been repeatedly told by T, we exchanged funny stories like the time J bet T he couldn't climb to the top of a lamppost and he ended up falling onto J. And Jay remarked that the fire reminded him of E's ginger hair flowing in the wind. We all laughed. I still remember the sound of them laughing, but it was followed by the most horrific shriek ever. The sound was like no sound I have ever heard. It was like a child was being ripped limb from limb. Only the sound seemed to come from everywhere, all around us, in every direction. Needless to say, we all hurried to bed pretty quick after that. I sat in my tent all alone, rifle in hand, all night listening, looking for shadows. Nothing much happened, though. As we woke the next morning, it was clear none of us had slept very much, if at all. The air was thick with fog, and the fire had burned right down to the embers. We got the fire going again and sat around the fire. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak up about last night, so we all just sat there in silence until T decided to be the one to speak. What the hell was that last night? One by one, they all jumped in. It must have been a mountain lion. They make a sound like that. What if someone was hurt last night? All good theories, but that's all they were. Elle tried to change the subject with breakfast. We all sort of agreed that we should. I think it was more to put our minds off it than actual hunger. We all headed out of camp to the tree where we hung the food, only to discover the remains of what used to be our food. The ground was littered with empty meat packets, burgers, steaks, ribs, all gone, but nothing else. T said it must have been a bear, and I said, if it was a bear, they would have eaten everything, not just the meat. And even if they had, why hadn't any of the other scavengers come to eat what's left? That's when it hit me what was wrong with this place. What was making the hair stand up on the back of my neck the other day? It was the sound. There wasn't no insect sound, no bird song, nothing, just the noise of the trees blowing in the wind. We beelined it back to camp as quickly as possible, the safety of our camp, what felt like an impenetrable fortress compared to being out in the forest. The day progressed onward. We were all frightened and ready to go home. We all collectively agreed to leave this afternoon, so we started tearing down camp. We were almost ready to go when we hear the sound of E screaming for help, but we all turn around to see where it was coming from, and Jay said he just went into the wood to take a leak before we left. We all run into the woods, me armed with my rifle, T with a pistol he bought to fend off bears. It wasn't until we got deeper into the forest that we realized that the scream was almost monotone, like there was no emotion behind the screams of what seemed like excruciating pain. At this point, the sun was starting to set, and through the thick tree canopy, it looked like night. We kept walking through the forest, but we never seemed to get any closer. It had been going on for around 20 minutes at this point. No matter how much we walked, we never got any closer to the source of the noise. We all eventually came to a clearing in the forest. There was something familiar about it. The trees, the lake. It was our camp. Well, since we cleared everything, it was just a clearing now with a fire pit in the center. How did the screams lead us back to where we started? And more importantly, why? I approached the fire pit and its old burnt-out coals. As I kneeled by it, there was something I caught in the corner of my eye. It was E's body dangling, but not hung from a tree. He was being held by his feet by that impossible thing. E's body was torn to shreds. He had large gashes down his front. The blood that oozed from the gashes was the deepest color of red I had ever seen. It turned his ginger hair a dark shade of orange. He died screaming in pain, the expression etched into his face. All right, there's a part 2 to this story, however, it'll be uploaded later on YouTube and Shorts, so follow for more and to stay tuned for these disturbing and scary stories. Don't forget to follow and like this video. Story 3. The bench. I needed money fast, and I found a cash hand job which would enable me to keep things going for 2 months. The job was strange, and basically I had to go to some field in a very high up place. Then in the distance I found a bench, but I was to always be behind this bench. There was a yellow circle of where I should stand behind the bench. I stood there from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then I went home. It was an odd job, but it gave me some income for the time being. Beggars can't be choosers. Anyway, as I stood inside the yellow circle behind the bench, the circle was drawn to be a specific measurement away from the bench. Exactly how like the sun is a specific measurement away from the earth. I decided to just step out of the circle where I was much closer to the bench, and people jogging on the field who were further down from the bench, they started screaming. Then I stepped back into the circle and the joggers wiped their eyes as if they were seeing things. I had no idea what had happened and why the joggers further down the field started screaming when I stepped out of the yellow circle. Then I stepped out of the yellow circle again and people started screaming. This time I was further away from the bench, and when I went back into the circle, passerbys further down the field started rubbing their eyes, as if they had seen something. Something was off and I couldn't tell what it was. My curiosity was getting the better of me, and I needed to see why people were screaming when I stepped out of the yellow circle. I had to see, and when I stepped out of the circle, passerbys in the distance started screaming. The bench is placed pretty high up on the field, and when I checked to see what was on the bench, it was a headless body. When I stood on the yellow circle, it gave an illusion from far away that my head was on the headless body's head. The circle was drawn from behind the bench and behind where the headless body was sitting. It was drawn in a specific measurement on the floor to make it look like that my head was on the headless body's head from afar. When I stepped out of the circle, it broke the illusion. Then the headless body had been taken.